Take this opportunity to introduce our director, Dr. Kurian Joseph Sir, Center for Climate Change and Disaster Management at University Chennai. Sir is Professor for Center for Environmental Studies at University, and he's also the Director for the Internal Quality Assurance Cell at University. Sir has more than 28 years of research experience and teaching profession in the field of environmental engineering, waste management, and cleaner production. Sir has published more than 200 research articles in national and international journals, books, and conference proceedings. Sir, I now request you to deliver the technical session 1, talk on climate action, global outlook. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir, we can.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I once again thank all the dignitaries for the valuable inputs and also the directions in which this one-day webinar session should move. Of course, what I'm planning to do in the next maybe about 30 minutes is to give a global outlook with reference to the climate action. Of course, already there were several details presented, but basically what I would like to focus on this session is when we focus on a particular action, like in this carbon sequestration, that is a local action. But the whole world, all of us know the current challenge before us is the sustainability of the actions. So when we talk about sustainability, we say we should think globally and act locally. So keeping that in mind, the global outlook with reference to the local action and the way forward that we are discussing, that is what is my focus. So when we talk about sustainability, with reference to any of the actions that we do, this sustainability mindset we should have, which has got, in my opinion, 5 dimensions. The first dimension is our ability to see the challenges, ability to see the connections. That generally is considered as the earthly mindset. In earth, we know there are challenges, there are also the connections. The ecosystem that we talk is particularly talking about these connections between living and the non-living that makes it sustainable. Of course, it's not only just seeing the connections. We should have the scientific mindset, the analytical mindset to find solutions to the challenges. We should also admit that our science, our scientific knowledge still has got limitations. So wherever our available information indicates that we are in the wrong direction or there are uncertainties, we cannot wait for that to be scientifically established and proven to take corrective actions, because at that time it will become too costly for us. So we should have the third mindset of taking precautions. And we know all these actions has got multi-dimensions. For example, we are talking about planting trees. It's not just that simple. Okay, it requires resources, especially land is required, water is required, the manure is required, and there are different dimensions to it, which in the subsequent talks we will be discussing in a detailed manner. And also we need support of different actors which are having different interests. So the collaborative mindset, the action mindset. So climate action requires this earthly mindset, analytical mindset, precautionary mindset, and also the collaborative mindset. And that actions are required if you look at globally in a situation where the global population, current population, we are nearing 7.5 billion, and we have only a limited safe and just space, which is bounded by two circles, as you could see in this diagram, of social foundation, where we talk about the social minimums that all of us should have to achieve a quality life in terms of water requirements or food requirements, health requirements, education requirements, income requirements, our opportunity for participation, equalities, especially with reference to gender equalities, housing requirements, etc. So energy requirements to support all those things. So where globally, if you take, there is a big shortfall. Locally also, same situation is there. So which means from the social minimum requirements point of view, there are different dimensions in which we need to grow or we need to fulfill the shortfall. At the same time, there is the second circle, there is the ecological ceiling, where at least in 4 places we have crossed. Not only climate change, biodiversity loss, land conversion, nitrogen and phosphorus loading, the nutrient overloading. And with reference to climate change, we are close to surpassing the target, the global temperature. Study shows that we are at 1.2 degree and we are trying to keep it within 1.5 degrees, maybe at the maximum 2 degree. Now the point when we talk about this sustainability outlook is that we should recognize these different boundaries are not independent. They are connected. For example, the climate change has got a very close connection with the social minimums of food, water, and it is also closely connected with land use changes, freshwater usage, biodiversity loss. For example, to produce food, we need to convert more land. We need to use more water. We need to use more nitrogen and phosphorus. And when we do this, there is going to be biodiversity loss, and that contributes to climate change, and that also undermines our water availability, and which further undermine our potential to grow food. So there is a interconnected linkages among these things. Of course, this is not something new. This we all were globally debating, and we have agreed that it is not just one goal that we should keep in mind. We should have several goals. At least 17 goals have been identified for us to keep in mind when we do anything. So how do we balance our actions keeping these different goals in mind? And how do we achieve the different goals when we work towards one goal? That is what basically the challenge or the opportunity that is available to us. I hope most of us are aware of these goals, because we have set these goals almost 7 years back, 2015. These goals were set globally as sustainable development goals. There are 17 goals, starting with poverty eradication, ending with partnership for achieving this goal. So in this, the climate action comes as the 13th goal, climate action. Now the first point that I would like to focus is how the SDG 13, the climate action, is connected with other SDGs. So that when we talk about one of the sub-actions of climate action, that is carbon sequestration, we should be able to also contribute to achieving the other goals. So collectively, we should be able to move forward with reference to the sustainability of the planet Earth. For example, SDG 1, if we take, it is focusing on no poverty. Now we know climate change is something that reduces the poor people's livelihood assets. For example, the strong assets that is required for any livelihood is health, access to water, having a home, having basic infrastructure. And the poor people are the people who are more vulnerable to this climate change and disasters. So if we take adaptation to climate change and reducing the risk of disasters, we are reducing the vulnerability of these poor people. So when we take a climate action, we are contributing towards SDG 1 in terms of providing or in terms of minimizing the disaster risk and also enabling livelihood assets for the poor, especially contributing to SDG 1. SDG 2, climate change is strongly connected with food security because the climate science says that food productivity is going to be connected with the impacts of climate change. So, sustainable and climate smart agriculture, which will be the right solution to fight climate change and also provide food security in terms of achieving sustainable development goal 2. Take the case of health. Climate change is projected to cause health impacts, especially in terms of heat-related mortality, illness associated with the different diseases, especially the changing patterns of infectious disease distribution. So when we are contributing to climate action, we are also contributing to good health and well-being. Not only that, take the case of education, SDG 4. We all know the natural disasters and the drought kind of situations, how that is impacting our education system. When there is a heavy rain, when there is flood, we need to close down our education institutions. So building resilience with reference to the climate action is also opening up opportunities for enhancing our goals with reference to the quality of education. Gender equality you take. Who is going to be most affected? It will be the women amongst the most vulnerable. So which means particularly the actions that we take with reference to climate change is likely to enhance the gender equality goal of sustainable development goal. Because all of us know how important is climate actions with reference to water efficiency and water ecosystem management. Already our Vice-Chancellor and other speakers have highlighted the importance of clean energy and energy efficiency, moving towards green energy connected with climate action. So, decent work if you take, promoting green growth and green jobs when we contribute to restoring the ecosystems, or when we take actions, or when we are establishing the green sink. Through that, how we can develop economic opportunities, decent work for people. We are addressing SDG 13 as well as SDG 8. Industrial innovations, especially in terms of energy efficiency, reducing the adverse environmental impacts, and industries themselves contributing to the carbon sink enhancement. We are contributing to SDG 9 and SDG 13. It also is a powerful measure to reduce the inequalities, because climate change and disasters is supposed to have impact on the poorest, as already I have told, the vulnerables. So which means if you are able to adopt, if you are able to fight climate change, that will contribute to reducing the inequalities. Sustainable cities, the case of cities, if you take the data indicates that it is the cities which account for about 80% of the energy consumption, about 75% of the global waste, and also the carbon emissions. So if we are able to make our cities green, that will contribute to sustainable cities, at the same time contributing to addressing the challenges of climate change. And as Dr. Udhayan sir clearly indicated, the kind of changes that should happen in our lifestyle in terms of sustainable consumption and production, reducing our food wastages, or switching over to simple energy efficient methods of consumption in lighting. This contributes to SDG 12 and also to SDG 13. Life below water, if you take SDG 14, there is a close connection, because we know marine systems are the great sink for the carbon dioxide. Now, if we are sinking more carbon dioxide into it, there is acidification, and coral reefs, which are providing home to about 25% of the marine life, they are likely to be destroyed. So fighting climate change will contribute to sustaining our marine resources, not only marine ecosystems, the terrestrial ecosystems also, management of forest, management of land use changes, which is the focus of our webinar, where we are trying to combat desertification and restoring degrading land. So when we take action on SDG 13, it is similar to taking action on SDG 15. Similarly, governance and enforcement improvement that is required in the context of climate actions will contribute to SDG 16 and SDG 17. If you take, this is the partnership for global goals. The 16 goals, global climate change, as Dr. Udhayan indicated, there is common but differentiated responsibilities. So the response requires global cooperation, especially to help the developing countries to adapt to the adverse impacts of climate change. It could be in terms of financial support, it could be in terms of technology transfer or capacity building in those countries that are needed the most, particularly the least developed countries and also the small island developing states. So in summary, what I would like to say is any action, and especially the actions that we are talking with reference to the climate action in terms of carbon sequestration, we can also contribute to the different sustainable development goals. I'm very happy that the state action plan for climate change has now included mapping of the actions with reference to the SDGs as part of its action plan. And I'm sure we will be able to also contribute to mapping this. The Center for Climate Change and Disaster Management has already initiated such actions at small level. We will be able to expand it Now coming specifically to the SDG 13, there are 3 targets supported with another 2 targets which should take place at global level. 13.1, if you take strengthening the resilience and adaptive capacity to climate-related disasters. 13.2, integrating climate change measures into policies and planning. And 13.3, building knowledge and capacity to meet climate change. So these are the 3 targets at which the whole world is working. And to achieve this target, what they have suggested is basically you do 2 things. One, you implement the UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and also you promote mechanisms to raise capacity for the climate planning and management. As already highlighted by Dr. Jayanthi Madam, the background for all our discussions is rising out of the knowledge that is shared, that is collected and shared by the IPCC, and the discussions which has taken place over a period of maybe 30 years, starting from 1992, where our global leaders met in Rio and initially adopted the United Framework Convention on Climate Change, that is followed up by several meetings of the parties who agreed to it. Almost all the governments globally are part of it. And recently we had the COP26. Of course, in Paris at COP21, the global leaders agreed that we should take serious action to keep the global warming ideally below 1.5 degrees centigrade, at the maximum 2 degrees centigrade. For that, each country will make their own effort. That is what is this NDCs, nationally determined contributions. And our Prime Minister, on behalf of all of us, have agreed that we as a country will, our country is committed to take these 5 actions as already highlighted by Dr. Jayanthi Ma'am, increasing our non-fossil fuel energy capacity to 500 gigawatts by 2030. That is the clean energy route. Meeting at least 50% of our energy requirements from renewable energy, reducing the total projected carbon emissions by 1 billion tons by 2030, reducing the carbon intensity of our economy by 45%, and by 2070 we should move towards net zero carbon. Of course, there is always a question, can we wait till 2070, because as of 2021 there are scientific studies which tells that already we are at 1.2 degrees centigrade of global warming, and at the current pace we may hit 1.5 degree by 2033 and 2 degree by 2060. And if we are not able to control within this 2 degree, then there are very catastrophic impacts that are predicted, especially for our country. If you take, we can see that the data indicates there is an annual mean temperature increase of about 1.7 to 2 degree by 2030 under different climate scenarios, because in climate change science we know we will not be able to exactly predict what will happen in the future, because it depends upon how we change our behavior, how the whole development take place. So the climate scientists use different scenarios. If we are not taking any action, then we'll be going in this direction. Maybe we will hit 4 to 5 degrees centigrade rise by end of this century. But if you are able to take actions, we will be able to bring down the kind of increase, or we should be able to keep the increase within 1.5 degree at least by end of 2100. So it is likely that if we are not able to control this, then very severe catastrophic events in terms of heavy precipitation and also disasters like cyclones will increase, and that is going to cost us more than the cost that is required for us to take actions. Of course, as discussed by the different speakers, the actions are not one, not even 100. The climate actions are very broad. So always we should keep this broad understanding in mind. It could be related to clean energy, energy efficiency, material efficiency, water management, agricultural management, waste management, environmental protection, and also even business services like insurance or green focused banking. Maybe there could be more opportunities also could be coming in terms of the climate actions and the decision support systems. It is in this context that we should look at our national action plan for climate change, which has got 8 missions as already discussed, of which one of the mission is our national mission for greening the India, which was launched in 2014, of course, with very specific objectives. The objectives are: we should safeguard our biological resource, which has got very close connection with the livelihoods of people, and which is going to be also likely to be affected by the adverse impacts of climate change. So the nation recognized the vital importance of this forestry and ecological sustainability, especially its connection with biodiversity, food, water, and livelihood. So this interlinkage is very clearly recognized in our national mission for Green India. So when we talk about greening India, it's not just planting trees and increasing forest cover. It is more than that. It means improving the ecosystem services, including biodiversity, including hydrological services. Of course, carbon sequestration is going to be one of the key results of that. For that, we have also defined targets. For example, increased forest cover or tree cover. We are planning to achieve at least 5 million hectares of forest or non-forest land to be improved with green cover. And at the same time, we should also increase the forest-based livelihood income for at least 3 billion people who live in and around the forest, and that should help us in enhancing our carbon sequestration by at least 50 to 60 million tons. So it's not just a tree plantation, it is more than that. And there are also sub-activities which focuses on enhancing the quality of the forest cover, ecosystem restoration and increasing the forest cover, enhancing the tree cover in urban and peri-urban areas, agroforestry and social forestry, restoration of wetlands, and also several cross-cutting interventions like improving the fuel use efficiency and promoting alternate energy sources, community livelihood enhancement, community conserved areas, especially sacred groves, and also strengthening the institutions that are required for forest governance and improving the investment climate for the farmers. So which means the forest or the carbon sink is not just carbon sequestration and timber. That is one part of it. It has got also connection with food security, biodiversity, water security, and also the livelihood security of the local communities in terms of providing them fuel, food, fodder, timber, medicinal plants, or other kind of materials which they can use for their livelihood securities. So if you look at this forest management or carbon sink generation, it contributes to the mitigation dimension as well as the adaptation dimension of the climate action. For example, carbon sequestration, by which we are talking about increasing the forest and the trees, and also the carbon stock enhancement, which is possible by afforestation, reforestation, and also forest restoration. The forest carbon stock conservation is also the other dimension. So which means we need to reduce deforestation and forest degradation. So which means sustainable practices of forest management, integrated fire management, forest fire through which forest gets destroyed, management of forest health, management of forest biodiversity, management of protected areas and wildlife. All this together will contribute to the mitigation dimension of the climate action. And when it comes to adaptation also, this forest management can help because it strengthens the adaptive capacity of the vegetation, the trees and the forest, especially in fragile ecosystems. And it also strengthens the adaptive capacity of the forest department communities, especially to cope with the kind of adversities that will arise out of climate change, adaptive land use planning and management. Because later experts will be talking about that, but in a generic term, we are aware that there are several threats. It is not that purposely the forest gets degraded. Okay. And the climate change also adds to the threat. It could be in terms of the fire control, pest and disease control, poor management or poor ways of harvesting, or sometimes overexploitation or destruction due to other disturbances like associated with landslides, etc. So there are different forest management activities that are required, which are all part of this action on Green India. And there are very clear studies which indicates that the temperature change and the precipitation change is having a very close bearing on the type and the nature of the forest. As climate gets warmer and as the climate gets drier, the forest gets replaced. Forest gets replaced by woodlands, grasslands, and finally it could become desert. So this is a very clear depiction how precipitation and how rainfall is connected, how forests can move towards deserts if we don't take care of our temperature increase and also the precipitation changes. So which means the climate change is also likely to impact our forest system. So the forest ecosystems are also particularly vulnerable to the climate change, especially the mountain forest, forest in the watersheds, dryland forest, coastal forest. So the management measures that are critical to reduce this vulnerability and also to facilitate adaptation of this fragile forest ecosystems is an important dimension of this action that we are talking about. It could be in terms of several actions. But of course, we know for us to take any action, we need money. So which means we should be able to tap the different available financial resources that are connected with the carbon sink enhancement, the climate action. So there are different possibilities now currently available in terms of voluntary carbon markets, adaptation fund of the GEF, the Global Environmental Facility. There is a UNEP developed program, RED, reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation in developing countries, plus partnership, RED Plus is called. Bilateral and NGO funding schemes, forest investment programs, forest carbon partnership facilities. So the extent of funding that is required for this, we should be able to tap from the opportunities the climate action provides to us. And maybe as a way forward, maybe Tamil Nadu could take the lead in developing payments for ecosystem services, which many countries are talking. For example, for any action to take place, there should be an incentive. So how do we incentivize creation of carbon sink? Can we create or can we provide incentive to our farmers and landowners in exchange for managing their land to provide the sort of ecological services that we are talking about? How we can create a carbon market, how we can create a biodiversity market or a watershed market, which could be the product of this carbon sink that we are talking about, is one direction in which we should move forward, in my opinion. As of now, we have not done. Maybe that is one of the future directions in which we should be able to work and develop payments for ecosystem services, which could offer an incentive to the people to create the carbon sink. Now, coming from forests to our cities, because cities also provide a lot of opportunities, especially greening of our urban green spaces. It not only provides the carbon sink opportunities, but it also provides several other benefits in terms of pollution abatement. When we talk about reducing emissions, there are different dimensions in which a green space could help in pollution abatement, especially directly the reduction of dust particles, reducing the level of noise, and the biodiversity and the nature conservation opportunities these green spaces can provide, better storm management opportunities that the green spaces, especially the wetlands, can provide, are additional benefits in terms of pollution abatement that we get. So we should be able to consider all these benefits when we talk about and when we think of the schemes and the activities related to carbon sink generation. Of course, when we get benefit, there are also inputs that are required, especially for green space development. We require water, we require manure, because we also, most of our cities are facing the problem of sewage treatment, solid waste management, as Dr. Ramchandran has indicated. The way forward should be to integrate the solution to our waste management with the carbon sink generation, so that there is a potential for sustainability. Treated sewage, can we use it for irrigating our forest land, or at least in urban areas for development of green space? If both are connected and linked, then we are able to solve two problems. How we use the compost or the bio earth that is generated out of mining of our legacy waste, compost that is produced out of the fresh waste, can we link that with these afforestation systems, where we should be able to solve two problems or more different problems by the same actions. And in cities, when we plant, we should also be careful that the trees that we plant are not damaging the sewer systems or the buildings. We should also be aware of the leaf litter that will be produced by the trees, and then how we are going to manage this. So which means it's not just the carbon sink that we are talking about. There are different dimensions which we can integrate, especially the different sustainable development goals we will be able to link with the climate actions for green cover and carbon sink enhancement. So to summarize, I say that our actions should provide synergies, and our actions should be balanced with our national level objectives, local, the state level objectives, and also synchronized with the other sustainable development goals in terms of production of goods, protection of soil, water and other environmental services enhancement, conservation of biodiversity, and livelihood support, as well as poverty alleviation. So the success of our mission will be how efficient we are able to have an integrated approach in terms of appropriate policies, planning, practices, and also the coordinated cooperation with community participation, and of course monitoring, assessment, and take corrective actions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor, for the insights about the sustainability, mindsets for sustainability, sustainable development, and its SDG goals, and elaborating about especially the SDG 13 climate action and its interlinkages with the other sectors, and also highlighting the National Mission for Green India Mission, which is the main core theme for the current webinar, and elaborating us about the carbon sink and the climate change adaptation and carbon management options. Thank you so much, sir. And also thank you for the opportunity to acquire knowledge about the forest carbon management and to know about the payment services for ecosystem services, and also knowing about the climate actions for green cover and carbon sink enhancement. Thank you so much, sir. And thank you for the inspiring speech, sir. If participants have any questions to the speaker, we can have a couple of questions. So interested participants can unmute it and can directly ask their questions. So we will enable the unmute option now.
I think Dr. Krishnaveni is raising her hand.
We'll unmute her, sir.
Krishnaveni, ma'am.
Ma'am, you're unmuted, so you can switch on your mic and then you can ask the question directly, ma'am.
Dr. Krishnaveni. Okay, maybe anybody else, because up to now we were all talking. Now it is open to participants also to Anjali. Anjali.
Yes, sir. May I have a question?
Yeah, please.
Yes,
please.
ma'am, you're audible.
So I'll just give you a very brief about ourselves. We are environmental consultants. We are called Eco Services, and we are from Guindy. So very quickly, sir, you had spoken about financing for forestry carbon sequestration projects.
Yes.
So there is a slight clause there when you go for financing in forestry. If the land had previously existed as forest,
Yes.
you can't claim carbon credits for existing forest. If it is land conversion, then yes, there are credit options available. So when you have such clauses in the entire carbon credit financing, the existing financing models, how will you address that? You still want some incentives to keep expanding on forest land. You want incentives for farmers to convert their land to forest land. But when there are all so many ifs and buts and clauses, how do you still make it feasible for people to go for expanding on afforestation or other means of carbon sequestration when it comes to forestry?
Thank you, Anjali. It's a very valid question that you have raised. The point is, of course, such issues, the starting point is raising such issue. And now it is forum. When such issue comes, we will certainly include that as an issue or concern to be addressed in as part of our recommendations and proceeding. And of course, quick solutions may not come, but this is the right start that you have given by indicating this point. We will certainly take it up. And as you know, this kind of carbon financing and other things, these are all global systems. So once we take it up, maybe in a progressive manner, this kind of issues will get addressed. Okay. Right now, I don't have a solution, but we will certainly flag this as an issue to be addressed. And I'm sure that this will be taken up in the appropriate forum by which solutions will come. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for taking the time to answer. Thank you. Thank you.
We can have another one question, sir, and then we can have the remaining questions in the end of the day. So is there any other question?
Anjali, if you can just send us a detailed note on this, that will help us in adding this point in a detailed manner as part of our recommendations.
Absolutely, sir. And there are a lot of EOIs coming now, both from TUFICIL and from the Forestry Department, to look at carbon sequestration for some of the marshlands and forests. Like I think it was, I'm not able to recall the RF, the reserve forest, but there are a lot of EOIs that are coming out. So we want to understand if from your interactions with those departments, if they are aware of these clauses. And these nationally determined contributions, the NDCs, it happens at the central and state level. So if somebody claims credit for one piece, then either then at the national level or the other party state level have to waive their rights to claim it again. You cannot double count. So all these aspects are they being discussed by these departments, as part of the EOI. So all that we would certainly love to discuss with you. So.
Sure.
Sir, I would like to add, sir.
Yes, sir, please.
Yes. Sir, Anjali was right, sir. Recently, we had discussed with the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change in Government of India. And they have mentioned that in case there is an organization or some body who wants to do some kind of carbon credits in a state, if it is Tamil Nadu, then it has to go through the MOEFCC. And we can't do it in isolation. And most of the things they are not agreeing to it. because it would, as Anjali mentioned, that it would even make changes in the NDCs. Okay. So they were not very sure of this carbon credits. We have to be, even now it is not very clear about it. So we had a couple of projects coming for Tamil Nadu, but it was not very well taken by the ministry, saying that, it could, make changes in the NDC. So it's a long process though.
Yeah, but let us start.
Yes.
Yeah.
We would love to, as consultants, we would love to, we are doing work on this in the corporate side of things. But to get into the government side of things, we are working with players who have done so in UP, we are working with players who have done so in Indore. But we're trying to see how we can do it in Tamil Nadu as well, since we are in Tamil Nadu. So if we can discuss all this with both, Anna University and the relevant departments, it will give us a great way forward of how we can stitch together all these solutions.
Yes. UP and as you said, in UP and other states, I think in forestry, maybe it is not done. In other sectors, it is done. So in forestry, we should be very clear about it.
No, ma'am, in UP, very recently, it has been done with Terry, and the advisory is one called VNV Advisory. They're based out of Bangalore. So Terry is front-ending it.
The funding the project?
The funding will come from credits, but the entire DPR and all that, that is being done with Terry and one other organization, which is called VNV based out of Bangalore.
Okay, but if it is an international body, then it is, I think there are some issues. That's what I would like to say. But I will also see to it in UP if they are doing it. We can follow that.
I can share that that news clip, ma'am. That was published.
Sure.
Absolutely can. I can put it up in the chat box.
Sure.
Okay. Professor Ramchandran. Ramchandran sir, unmute.
Can I interact with you?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes.
No. What they said is correct, but the problem is now it is not exactly the previous carbon credit now. Now any project, it is demonstrable at site and verifiable up to the project period. Then they will give fund. We must demonstrate that this much of carbon sink we are going to have in terms of carbon equivalent through green cover and the soil, for which DPR must be prepared, and the funding agency also must agree through our Ministry of Environment and Forest, Government of India, as Dr. Jayanthi said. No state government can have any funding from anybody without the knowledge of Government of India. This is because it comes under international agreement. Yes. International agreement says that any country, their nodal officer should be identified in the particular country. Then the international agency will correspond with the nodal agency. As far as the carbon sink is concerned, the nodal agency is Environment Forest, Government of India. As far as energy is concerned, this climate bureau of Government of India. As far as agriculture, like that, different wings, all the nodal agencies are different departments. Through them only we can send our DPR. Then with the interesting countries will come with for that carbon management, that this much of demonstrable and verifiable carbon you are going to sink it, we will give the fund to them. That extent only now. Even in UP government, that whatever they said, project is under process consideration only. Yet to start there also. So we have a program, as your theme is very good. Now enriching carbon in the soil is nobody has done in India. We have a degraded forest. 45% of the area is degraded, for which we need enormous amount of carbon in the soil. You have informed me on the day that the corporation, due to mining, the garbage mining, we are getting a lot of carbon. Yes. Definitely, this is the opportunity. We must take the carbon to the degraded area, put it in the carbon soil. Then even biochar, we can incorporate biochar, all the biological waste degradation. Everything should be taken to the degraded area. Then the degraded area can be planted with indigenous tree species. So you cannot fix, rightly Mr. Udhayan pointed out, desert must be desert only. Evergreen forest must be evergreen. Then only the ecosystem will be in a balanced one. We have a degraded forest for which we can take the carbon from the biodegradable or municipal solid waste sources, and we can put it in the carbon, the forest, for which there is the emission reduction activity we are doing. Second, enriching the carbon in soil, another. So two purposes served in a single action. So that is probably this. You have mooted that idea. Let us have discussion with Dr. Jayanthi and the corporation people. We will have a pilot project at Landmangalam or Vandalur, nearby forest area. That's what in Miyawaki, the Miyawaki, Japan people forest type. Nothing. They are filling the dump yard and they are planting any species. They want to cover the ground. Ground must be covered without erosion. Here now we have about 40% of the area open forest. That area should be covered with some green cover, for which we need minimum 1% carbon. That carbon should be replenished only with the help of the external sources, as you pointed out, from the municipal solid waste or degradable waste material only. Let us look into that in future. Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Shalini, think and proceed.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for inculcating us with the various ways we can increase the carbon sink. So it will be very helpful for the participants to know in depth about the carbon sequestration and the forest carbon management. Thank you so much, sir.